the second part of our video for Unit 5, Day 4. This will be the last video for this unit, and we're using everything we've learned about solving linear equations, linear systems of equations, to move into solving systems where we have one quadratic and one linear equation. So far everything we've done has solely been with linear equations, and now we're going to solve systems that have one linear and one quadratic equation. That's why I call it a linear quadratic system. So we can still use either of the three techniques we learned. We learned three techniques: graphing, and then algebraically solving by substitution, or elimination. Alright, now that we have one quadratic equation involved, we're going to be getting two answers on most of these. Sometimes we get one, sometimes we could get no answers, but on most ones we're going to get two answers, since we have a quadratic equation involved. Remember, with each of those two answers, there's still an x and a y involved, so it's really like finding four different pieces. So first what we'll go over is solving by graphing. So we already know how to graph lines. We've reviewed this in the previous videos, so we go ahead and graph the line first. So y-intercept -2, slope is positive 2 over 1, so I count up 2, right 1. And then when I run room, down 2 and left 1. So graphing quadratic equation is something we went over back in Unit 3, so if you need to review that, you can look back at some of the videos from Unit 3. Oh, we again look at our three coefficients, A, B, and C. What we're going to do is use our vertex formula to start this off. So x-coordinate for the vertex is going to be negative b over 2a, so that'd be positive 2 over 2 times 1, which should be 2 over 2, or just 1. So we're going to put that right in the middle of our table. Then we can get our next two values to the right, our next two values to the left. And to fill out the table, we're just going to plug in these x values back into the function x squared minus 2x plus 1. So starting with our vertex at 1, 1 squared would be 1, minus 2 times 1 is 2, so 1 minus 2 is negative 1, plus 1 is 0. Plug in 0, x squared, 2x cancel out, just get 1. Since it's the same distance from the vertex, the parabola is symmetrical, we're going to get 1 for both values 0 and 2. Same idea with negative 1. Square that, it's positive 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 would be positive 2, so 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 more would be 4. And again, since they're the same distance from the vertex, they're going to have the same value. So if you need more review on that, if you don't remember those steps or what we did back in Unit 3, again, look at those videos from Unit 3, and you can go over how we graph quadratic equation or quadratic functions. So once we have the table, we can now take this to the graphs and start by plotting all the points on the table. So first one's negative 1, 4, then 0, 1, 1, 0, see our first intersection, 2, 1, and then 3, 4. And there's our second intersection. So we get two intersections on this one. This one is 1, 0. And this one right here is 3, 4. So again, you don't have to do it this way, but if graphing is something that makes sense to you, you can do the problems this way. So algebraically, we have two ways of solving. One is substitution, the other is elimination. So remember, for our substitution, our steps, we had solve, substitute, solve, substitute. Right, so the first solve will be solve for a variable. If you look at these two equations, they're both already solved for y. Alright, this makes the substitution step very easy. Solve is already done, so we can just substitute by setting the two equations equal to each other. Right now it's a quadratic equation, so we have to follow all our steps for solving a quadratic equation. So it starts with standard form. Remember, moving the terms around, we only combine like terms. So we combine our x's with x's, constants with constants, x squares with x squares. Don't combine anything that's not the same kind of term. So now we do our factoring here. So we find two numbers that are going to multiply to positive 3 and add up to negative 4. So that'd be negative 3 and negative 1. Right, from here, we have to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve. So we get positive 1, positive 3. Remember that we still need a y value. So what we can do is take these values and plug them in. Again, with system of equations, you can plug it into either equation to get the same value, so plug it into the easier one. So if we plug 3 in there, it's the linear equation. 2 times 3 would be 6, and minus 2 would be 4. Right, so again, we get the same answer as before, 3, 4. The same thing if we take the 1, plug it in over there. 2 times 1 is 2, and minus 2 is 0. Same system, we get the same two answers. Right, so that's another way we can solve a linear quadratic system. And the last way we learned, we're solving by elimination. So we solve a linear quadratic system, we're always going to eliminate the y variable, since there's always going to be two different kinds of x. Right, there's going to be x and x squared. So if we eliminate the x's, we still have x squared, and then we'd have two different variables in the problem. So what we're going to do is eliminate the y's in these problems. The way we do that with these is we multiply by negative 1. So we have a positive y in one equation, negative y in the other. Line up our like terms here, make it easier to identify which terms we're combining. So here we look, we have y minus y is 0. X squared is its own term, negative 2x, negative 2x, negative 4x, 1 and 2 is 3. Now from here, it's just like that last problem. We're going to factor. Right, we've already done this part of it. Negative 3, negative 1 are two numbers that multiply to positive 3, add up to negative 4. We set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So that's where we get our positive 3 and our positive 1 from. And again, at this point we can plug in to either equation, so the linear equation is going to be usually easier to plug into, and we'll get our two answers for our y values. So we get 4 and we get 0 again. Alright, so this is going to be the hardest thing we do this unit, is these systems where we have one linear, one quadratic equation. If you want to look up any other resources, any other videos, or anything else that can help you with this, you can search for linear quadratic systems of equations. bottom there's two practice problems, so try and solve these on your own. See if you can follow the steps. You don't have to use graphing. I want to point this out. You do not have to solve by graphing. These are just in case you want to. Right? If you want to solve by graphing, you can use the graphs, but you can use any method that is comfortable for you. So use substitution, elimination, or graphing. So looking at the examples we did in the notes, whichever one you think is the easiest, you can follow those for this one. So trying to do these two practice problems, set it up. Remember, you're getting two different answers for x and two different answers for y.